To many people, Fanta is just a mid-soda that has way too much sugar and corn syrup, and you should probably avoid drinking it if you care about your health. In the CSGO cheating community, Fanta was one of the best semi-rage cheats. Back in 2017, Fanta was first introduced. Cheats at this time were a lot more simple. You either had a cheat that was an HVH cheat or a legit cheat. Some cheats had both a legit and rage spot, but there was no middle ground. So you either had to legit cheat or just rage. Fanta was the very first cheat that focused on legit cheating HVH. It was also the first cheat to actually have legit anti-aim or legit AA. Legit AA was when you had anti-aim and a fake, but to Overwatch and spectators, your screen would look entirely normal, as opposed to the standard down-pitch anti-aim where you're staring at the ground and spinning non-stop. Legit AA would be completely unnoticeable. This is also when fake angles were still a thing. Using legit AA in matchmaking was unheard of. Of course, to use legit AA, you needed to have a good and stable internet speed, or else you'd flick a bunch. Fanta also had another unique feature that no other cheat had, which was anti-trigger. Anti-trigger was designed to mess with people's trigger bots, specifically when someone was just holding trigger with an op. A lot of people assumed anti-trigger was just fake leg on peak, and it was similar to it, but it was actually more than that. Another unique feature Fanta had was legit auto wall, which basically would only auto wall someone if they were partially visible. So if an enemy was hiding behind a box, but their foot was sticking out, it would shoot them through the box. Other cheats didn't have this feature, they just had full auto wall, which wasn't safe to use in matchmaking without getting Overwatch banned. With all the unique features Fanta had, and all the features being useful against other cheaters, you can imagine why Fanta was very strong in matchmaking. The aimbot of Fanta was also very strong, and very different than every other aimbot. It wasn't even called aimbot, it was called tapbot. Regardless, it felt very different from every other cheat. It's hard to explain, but if you ever use Fanta, then you should know what I mean. It just felt weird, but in a somewhat good way. Fanta also had a very strong trigger bot, along with trigger magnet. This is another area which a lot of cheats lacked in. They had trigger bots, but they either didn't have trigger magnet or the trigger magnet was too weak. In 2017, semi-rage wasn't really a thing, at least not to what people now would consider semi-rage. Firstly, the term didn't even exist till 2018. And secondly, people played a lot more clean since Overwatch was actually a threat. A Prime account also meant more, since you needed an account that was at least ranked 21 and you needed a phone number. So people were not ready to throw away their Prime account or risk getting it banned. It was a different time, and people valued their money a lot more. Fanta began the shift towards semi-raging. No other cheat really stood a chance against Fanta. Legit cheats would get destroyed. Aimware, Skeet, and interwebs all stood no chance. You could use the rage bot and win, but say goodbye to your account. This was before people realized they could use a very low FOV rage bot and not get banned. People were pretty scared to have zero smoothing, since using rage bot meant you were just going to snap onto people's heads. Fanta, despite the very strong aimbot and trigger magnet, it still had smoothing and looked somewhat clean. As long as you weren't monkey blatant, you'd most likely not get banned. Surge was the owner and dev of Fanta. In 2017, Surge sold Fanta Lifetime for $100, which was actually a very good price. But Surge was very picky on who he sold it to. He would only sell it to people he knew or was friends with. If he didn't know who you were, he wouldn't sell it to you. In 2018, Surge began selling Fanta Lifetime for $200 now. By this point, Fanta only had around 100 or so users, so it was still a very small cheat. Fanta didn't have any invite codes, but you could vouch for someone and Surge would probably just sell it to them. Surge wasn't as picky anymore, and he often would just sell Fanta to anyone who managed to get into contact with him. Occasionally, he would also make a poll in the Fanta Discord and see if the majority of Fanta users were fine with someone joining. By mid-2018, Fanta was actually the most exclusive CSGO cheat. Skeet had over 2,000 users. Compare that to Fanta, which only had 150 users. However, Fanta's security was very bad and basically non-existent. For starters, Fanta had no loader. There was also no website, so when you bought Fanta, all you would get is an exe file with your name on it, which Surge claimed was your own unique build, but we'll get into that later. So you could share your exe file with anyone and they could use it free of charge. For updates, Surge would have to individually DM everyone their own build again. Since there weren't that many users, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was still pretty inconvenient and slow. So with the security of Fanta being this bad, it's not a huge surprise that someone leaked their build and it got cracked. It probably took them 20 seconds to crack it, but nonetheless, it was sent to Noob Dog, and he made a video about it, which did pretty well, since Fanta had grown a lot of hate from its users having huge egos and flexing it, and also from people who wanted Fanta but couldn't get it. Despite the crack, it didn't really change things. Things continued as usual, people still continuing buying Fanta Lifetime, and Surge continued making more and more so-called unique builds for everyone. Surge realized that he needed a loader and he needed a website. It was no longer feasible to individually DM over 200 people every time there was an update, so Fanta got its own website, which was Fanta.Club. Now there was actually a loader, and there was actually a hardware ID attached to your account. The website also introduced Fanta invites, so now you could just straight up invite someone instead of referring them to Surge. Surge also introduced a monthly option instead of the $200 lifetime option. Fanta invites were actually worth more than any other cheat. By this point, Skeet already had 2 big invite waves back to back. People actually were trading Skeet invites for Fanta invites, if you can believe it. Fanta was harder to obtain than Skeet, and people selling Skeet invites for $20, while Fanta invites were at least $50. Fanta was also more of an NA cheat, since the majority of Fanta users were Americans. So for Europeans, it was harder to get invited, since no one knew you. Even with Fanta now having a loader, the security was still really bad. Fanta would get cracked constantly, and people would send the DLL to Valve, which would lead to Fanta getting detected. Remember when I brought up the unique builds? Yeah, that wasn't actually true. The builds were not unique, so when the cheat got leaked and detected, everyone got banned. Surge realized he had a mole in his community, so he decided from now on, he would only keep the users he trusted and give them new builds. So for everyone else who had bought Lifetime, they essentially got scammed. In 2019, Fanta introduced 2 new versions, which were Mango and Grape. The original version was now called Orange. Mango was basically the same as Fanta, but it was missing some of the key features, such as legit AA or anti-trigger. The clan tag was also sippin Mango instead of sippin Fanta. Surge basically let anyone buy Mango. All they had to do was just fill out a short application. The other version, which was Grape, was supposed to be the HVH version of Fanta. Grape never released, and probably never even existed. A lot of people were using Mango, but they were still desperate to get into the real Fanta. Selling invites wasn't allowed, but people found other, more creative ways to give away their invites. One guy was promised an invite if he sat there for over 20 hours and watched Crab Rave. He had to Discord screen share the entire time, and he wasn't allowed to be AFK. He had to actually be there, and they would ask him questions at random times to see if he was there. He did actually get the invite. Fanta by this point now actually had competition. Other cheats like Novoline were now competing against it. For a while, Fanta and Novoline had a bit of a rivalry going on. Fanta users hated Novoline users, and Novoline users hated Fanta users. This war would go on for months, until Fanta was detected again. Fanta was actually detected a bunch of times in 2019. It was the only cheat that was getting detected constantly, probably because we were cracking it and sending it to Valve over and over again. Fanta was the only cheat that got detected over 5 times in a year. By 2020, Fanta was still around, but it was no longer credible or hyped up. no one really cared about Fanta anymore. Everyone had moved on to other cheats. People realized Surge was incompetent, and the cheat security was never going to be reliable. It also wasn't even the best semi-rage cheat anymore. Novoline was better, or GameSense with Lewis was far better. Pretty much no one used Fanta on a decent account, since no one trusted it anymore. In 2021, Surge made the decision to shut down CSGO Fanta and move on to other games. He sold a package option for Escape from Tarkov, DayZ, and Rust for $100 a month. Fanta was later completely shut down, and the website was also shut down. Fanta has been dead for years now, and it's not coming back. It joins the pile of other dead CSGO cheats. The Fanta community was very unique because they had this weird obsession over posting this overweight kid constantly, probably from the very odd expressions he made and how he walked or waddled. They would also regularly coordinate Fanta 5v5s, which was just 5 Fanta users versus 5 other Fanta users. Deadpool would regularly stream these games, and they were actually pretty entertaining, especially when they get mad and butthurt when they lost. Ironically, the newer Fanta members would almost always beat the older Fanta members, probably because older Fanta members never realized how easy it was to make Fanta's trigger bot miss. All you had to do was jump and the trigger bot would almost always miss. As one of the OG Fanta members, I can say it was definitely a really good cheat in 2017 and 2018. But after that, it was just overhyped and became a joke. Surge never took criticism well, and he would never admit that Fanta was detected, even when everyone in the Discord got banned at the same time. He'd always blame it on people injecting other cheats, or getting Overwatch banned. Whenever someone complained about the cheat, he did the typical user or config error. If you thought I wasn't gonna talk about the menu, you're solely mistaken. The menu was extremely ugly, and pasted from Gladiator cheats. Another weird feature that Fanta had was meme swap. I'm not even convinced it actually did anything, but it was supposed to swap your real and fake heads with each other depending on the crosshair of the enemy player. So whenever the enemy put their crosshair on your real head, it would swap it with the fake head. Interesting feature, but knowing Surge, it's hard to say how real it actually was. In the end, Fanta was a very memorable and controversial cheat, which had very high highs, but extremely low lows.